July 22nd, 2024. This is the S&P 500 E-futures mini on the 2002 chart using NinjaTrader 8. There was no economic data that came out to really move the market one way or the other. It looked like it was kind of a spike in the pre-market, and for the most part, trading's just kind of stayed within a 20 to 30 point range. It wasn't a very obvious range initially, but when you had three confirmations at the top, then I at least knew there was some kind of resistance up here. And then the bottom, I was kind of adjusting it throughout the day, but I eventually settled it down here, and it looked like it might have been kind of this big gray range with a failed breakout temporarily, and then the prices moved right back up to the top and kind of closed in the range again. I took a total of one trade today and it was profitable. There weren't too many setups that I could find. There were, I think, most of the setups kind of in this orange down channel coming down, and there were a few almost setups. But then other than that, the price action just didn't yield that many clean setups that I could find. So as before, I'm just going to kind of go to where I thought I saw a setup instead of doing my bar by bar. In the pre-market, it was kind of this big rally up, and I thought I saw a setup here, but unfortunately it was the pre-market. There was prices were obviously trending up on this green up channel. It came down, it bounced. You could argue there was a small break here. I'll go ahead and zoom in. And I saw a new high, first entry long pullback, second entry long here. What I liked about this setup, unfortunately, it's in the pre-market, but if this is in regular trading hours, I like this setup because you have a new high, it's a first entry long pullback. This second entry long signal bar moved one tick below this guy and then closed at the high, which is, right at the top. And the risk is only 6 ticks, or the bar is only 6 ticks. So the total risk is maybe 8 ticks. So right within the good sweet spot for a setup, and there was enough room for the highs. So this is a potential setup, but unfortunately it was the pre-market, so I don't like trading the pre-market, left it alone. Prices then continue moving. It falls, so it has this break of this green down channel, up channel, this yellow, excuse me, I'm rolling over myself. It was this break of this green up channel, this orange down channel broke, and then it consolidated and then continued upwards. I didn't see any clean setups that I like. This is very, very tight trading here. There was a second entry right here that doesn't really have a setup because there's no key entry point. It's just kind of floating in the middle of nowhere. Pushes to the high, and it creates a first entry long pullback, second entry long. Second entry long creates a second entry long failure. I like this setup, but I didn't take it, unfortunately, is I like that, okay, the signal bar is bullish. It's also above the EMA. This green down channel broke, so you're expecting a test of the low. Now, previous price action already showed was this green up channel broke, tested the high. If you're looking at this channel independently, it also had a break, also tested a high. So it looks like prices are starting potentially to move back, especially after break of the EMA. When previously the EMA was holding pretty strong, there was a dwell outside here. And though I thought there was a potential repeat of a dwell outside here and a continuation up, but when I saw this signal bar, okay, I was thinking when you first see this, you're thinking prices are going to keep moving up. But then when this bar moved one tick up, flushed and closed at the bottom, I was thinking, okay, now there could be a potential correction in play. And I like that it closed at the lows. There's enough room from the lows, even if you moved one tick below to enter, before you hit the localized low. So I thought this is a decent, decent trade to maybe have taken. Prices then moved down on this orange channel, break, tested the low. There's a consolidation area here. So I'm just kind of sitting on my hands. I'm not too sure what's happening. Keep in mind, this gray range doesn't exist at this point. It bounces and it starts moving back up. I drew this yellow up channel. I saw a break and a flush down. And this is where I saw I would say it's an almost trade because it's not really anything. Because the reason I didn't like this trade is everything is reversed. There's two key entry points, but they're opposites of each other. There's a new high, a first entry long pullback, second entry long, technically a lower high potential. It's also a new low, first entry short, pullback, second entry short. Now, if you're trying to take a long on this trade, this is the wrong colored signal bar. And if you're thinking of a short here, this is also the wrong colored signal bar. So this is just something I noticed in real time because, I was thinking, oh, I see something. I had a hunch that it might be moving up, but I wasn't 100% sure. But it's just something I want to mark for myself. It's also my notes, not in the video description, but just my own personal notes. Something like this, I'm glad I didn't get drawn into it and potentially take a bad trade. Prices move up, it consolidates up here, and I actually had the top of this range lower, touching about right here initially, where you see this trading range was. It breaks out of this orange up channel and starts flushing down, breaks below the EMA. It gets a little choppy. It hits and touches a second time at the top. So it broke above where I originally had the trading range high. And I dragged it up to where it currently sits, which was kind of at the highest point here. It looked like it was pretty much one test, two tests, a triple test. So at this point, I also thought maybe I'm in a larger trading range. I didn't trust this support down here too much yet, but I do trust that this is a potential resistance up here. So I did see this break, this flush down this orange channel. Now I'm expecting this orange channel to test a new low, but it doesn't quite, I mean, it makes an attempt, but it gets a little bit convoluted. It's just kind of moving sideways. It's hard for me to fully know if it's considered testing a new low, because technically it hasn't tested the new low, but these two attempts could have been seen as one attempt down, pullback, second attempt down, but it wasn't decisive enough. If pushes up, I saw this as a localized new low. First entry short pullback, pushes up and back down. And on the life of this candle, it creates your second entry short and it closed at the lows. I thought this is an almost trade, mainly because after the break of this orange down channel, it's ambiguous to me whether it really tested the lows or if it needs to continue testing lows back down. I don't have this yellow down channel drawn yet, so I couldn't use it as a key entry point. The only thing I did like was I like the break up, kind of a trap, and flush down and close at the low below the EMA, but not good enough for a trade. So I called it an almost trade, at least for me. Then prices continue moving, and I see a lower high. I also like the same thing similar to this. It moved one tick, then flushed down, closed below the open, but not quite as nice as this one where it actually moved below the extreme, because this one engulfed this green hammer bar completely, but this one didn't quite do that. So I call this one also an almost trade, because after I saw this move, I felt a little bit of FOMO. I was thinking, did I miss a potential great opportunity? But I had to remind myself that I personally wasn't too sure of my read of the chart when I just saw this. So when this one occurred, I was thinking there's probably a lower high. There's enough room to the lows. Again, it just feels, you know, if this had moved up, touched the EMA and flushed down, then I would have trusted it, but it wasn't and it didn't. So I had to kind of leave it alone. And as you can see, if you did get it, you'd enter, you'd have to probably sit through this, depending on what your profit target is. You'd probably get a 1 point profit target. Any more, you had to sit through this, which I'm glad I didn't have to. When it came up and touched this, that's when I drew this yellow down channel. And it sets up for this awesome trade here. Unfortunately, I was away from my desk right around between usually every day between like 8 to 8:30. I'm kind of up and about because I had to take care of stuff in the home. And unfortunately, when I came back, I saw this setup, which it looked actually pretty decent because I already had this yellow down channel established, one touch, two touch. It has the fourth touch. It has an EMA rejection, and it's from this low here, first entry short pullback, second entry short. The risk on this bar is only 6 ticks. Excuse me. The risk is probably 8 ticks, but it's only a 6 tick candle. So I thought this is a decent trade to have potentially taken, but unfortunately I didn't take it. Then prices continue moving down. It hits this consolidation area. I saw a potential failed breakout because originally I was thinking this is the trading range and a failed breakout, but it just didn't look clean. So I just disregard this note for more for myself. This is actually where I set up my, where this setup comes up and I take my first trade. Now in hindsight, and shortly after I took the trade, especially when I saw this bar close, I kind of immediately regretted it. So what's happening is prices are ranging right now. It could be a two-tiered range where there's some price action up here, bullish bias clearly, and then it kind of spans the entire range. It has a potential breakout here, but it's dwelling. So what I saw, and I guess I kind of convinced myself, was when this bar closed so bullish, I said, oh, obviously it's a first entry long pullback. It's about to create a second entry long. So yes, it does create a second entry long. So when this bar closed, I got my order ready and I was watching this carefully. It opened, it was dancing around toward the end of this candle. It breaks above, I enter. And I thought, okay, now this is going to run up and go because I was thinking EMA is starting to show strength. It's going to be a breakout of this range because it had an attempt to try to move to the highs. It broke out, tried to come back down, but it stayed out here for a little while. So that's where I got it in my head that this is going to be a long trade. As you can see, I entered right here, one tick above, which is not good because in hindsight, this isn't a safe trade to take. I was lucky on this candle. It opens here, it fills me, and then it crashes down. Now, my stop was actually below, not this candle, but below this triple candle here. So if I didn't get out on this one, I may have gotten out on this one, but if let's say I entered a little bit later, I got slippage, this big red candle likely would have stopped me out. So in hindsight, this wasn't a high probability trade. I jumped the gun early. I saw this great signal bar, but great signal bar isn't alone the only reason to take a trade. The context, I kind of, I would say, got a little bit worked up, thinking, okay, there's a new high, first entry long, second entry long. Second entry long is confirmed, but I didn't wait for this candle to close on a kind of sketchy setup because it's ranging. If it was more trending, then you could justify early entry, but I really couldn't justify it. And as a result, I was able to get a green trade out of it, but I also know that this was not a well planned, well thought out trade. And I was very lucky to actually walk away green here. Prices then move back into range, pushes up, breaks with a yellow up channel. It tests a new high already and it comes back down, creates a new high. It's a first entry long pullback. Here, it creates a second entry long. Also, I saw this as a new low here. First entry short pullback, second entry short failure. I thought it was an almost trade because after this candle closed, you're already pressing toward the high. So there's no real room to enter a trade for a long. So I felt it was a little bit dicey, but I did see something like this. And I just wanted this setup ideally to have come down to the EMA and closed earlier to give me enough room for a scalp. So this is an almost trade. Then prices kind of started moving up, moves up in this big orange up channel, which I didn't really see a good clean second entry long or short. Definitely when this is moving up, I'm not thinking short. It's too far from the EMA. It's a little risky to think even be thinking short at this point. And this is setting up to look like a very kind of consistent range. So that's where I kind of established and thought, okay, the bottom of the range is here, top of the range is here. I'm not ready to go short. I need to see it come up to here. I'm not ready to go long because there's no setups. And then it kind of hits this consolidation area. Technically, there's a new high here, first entry long. There was a second entry long here, but it's a bad signal bar. EMA is very, very pretty much flat. It is on the bottom side of, this, these prices are kind of pretty much, I guess, on the bias on higher than the EMA, but that's still not good enough for a trade. Prices move up. And so then it kind of hits this high. There was the high of the day, and it started breaking down. It moved down on this yellow down channel. And this is where I thought there might be a possible trade. So technically, it's a new high. It's a first entry long pullback, second entry long, count resets. You could consider this as the localized new high. And that's kind of what I did. And I also started the count again. I said, a first entry long, pullback, second entry long. This is a really good signal bar. Even though this was the high of my range, I wasn't that concerned it was acting as a resistance now because earlier it was, but later prices aren't really respecting it at this point. And I was thinking this orange down channel has a break, moves back in, test the low. If you didn't believe that, it already tried to test it a second time. And I'm thinking prices are coming back up. I also had this blue channel drawn, the blue range drawn. Actually had it here, and at one time I extended it up to here, but it just seemed like it fit pretty well here. Nevertheless, I wasn't too worried about the highs. I was more focused in on the support side, and I liked that it was finding some kind of support here. So I thought this is a possible trade with a good signal bar up here. I didn't take it though, and then prices kind of moved up, and it just kind of moves and chops into the close. There was other trades I was trying to look for in here, but they didn't look clean because as you can see, EMA is starting to flatten out pretty sideways. You could say there's a new high here. It's the first entry long pullback. It's a second entry long here, but I'm not a keen fan of this when the EMA is flat and the body is so tight. Because when the body is so tiny, it's telling you that there is a lot of potential players on the other side. If you're thinking of going long, there has been a lot of potential sellers because they couldn't really get it too far from, the bulls couldn't really push it up that high. It just felt a little dubious, so I just left it alone. Then as prices kept moving, this last 30 minutes, and even the last 30 minutes right here, so this is from the last 30 minutes starts from here all the way to about right here. So this is 20 minutes of trading. Then from here is 10 minutes of trading into the close. This is the last 10 minutes of regular trading hours, as just it always usually does. It gets very, very volatile. I do not want to be taking a trade in the last 10 minutes. The only way I'd be in a trade is if it's managing a runner or I was already in a trade from previous and it was just kind of managing the close of it, but definitely not taking an entry there. So that's kind of how I saw the charts today. Not too many setups that I could find. And even with the setups I did find, there weren't very many that I considered possible trades. A lot of them were almost trades. And the one trade I did take, I look back in hindsight and I realized how lucky I was that it turned out green because it was not a good setup. It was very, very sketchy. So hopefully that was helpful.